In 2018, a 26-year-old woman went hiking alone in the New Mexico wilderness. She left behind a note, a map, and a time she'd be back. But 2 days later, when she didn't return, search teams found something chilling at the edge of a cliff, her journal. And inside, her final words were, "It's not a baby, it's calling me by name." What happened next is one of the eeriest unsolved wilderness disappearances in modern history, and it might not be human. This video contains scenes that some viewers may find disturbing. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. In the summer of 2018, a 26-year-old woman named Emily Carter set out for a weekend hike in a remote wilderness of northern New Mexico. She wasn't reckless, far from it. Emily had grown up around the mountains, logged hundreds of miles on trails, and even taught basic wilderness survival at a local outfitter. This wasn't her first solo trip, but as she would later write in her journal, it was her last. Emily was 27, a wildlife biology grad student with a quiet love for solitude and remote trails. On the morning of October 12th, she packed her gear into the back of her Subaru, left a quick voicemail for her mom. "I'll be offline for a few days, love you." She left on a Friday afternoon, planning a 2-night loop through Carson National Forest. Her trail of choice was called Raven's Ridge, a narrow, winding path that weaved through pine forests and skirted steep drop-offs. It wasn't well traveled. That's what she liked about it. She checked in with the park station, texted her mom a photo of her pack, and left a note on her car, "Looping around Ravens, back Sunday by 3. The trailhead was quiet when she arrived, just her car in the gravel lot. She signed the logbook at the ranger kiosk, hoisted her pack, and stepped into the trees. For the first few miles it was peaceful. Birds chirped above her, leaves fluttered down like ash, and every so often she'd stop to photograph shelf fungus or trace a deer print in the mud. She was in her element. But as the afternoon wore on, something began to shift. The forest grew thicker, the trail narrowed, and the sounds of birds and wind slowly faded behind her, not all at once, just bit by bit, until she realized she hadn't heard a single bird in nearly 20 minutes. She chalked it up to distance. Maybe she'd gone farther than she thought. By 4:30 p.m., she reached a clearing by a small stream. A gentle slope offered dry ground, and tall trees shielded the spot from wind. It was perfect for camp. She dropped her pack, shrugged off her flannel, unrolled her tent, and set it up with the practiced ease for someone who had done this dozens of times. She gathered kindling, lit a small fire, and boiled water for tea. The shadows lengthened around her, and the air took on that stillness that only happens deep in the woods, where things start to feel too quiet. Emily sat by the fire, journal in her lap, jotting notes. Camp is set. Gorgeous clearing. No animals spotted yet. By the time darkness fully settled in, her tent was zipped, her gear stowed, and her flashlight flickering weakly beside her. She jotted a quick journal note. Made it to camp. Beautiful spot, but the woods feel heavy tonight. She chalked it up to nerves, rolled into her sleeping bag, and let the fire burn low outside. But just before she drifted off, she thought she heard something. Soft, faint. Late Saturday night, around 2:17 a.m., a storm rolled in. Lightning cracked across the sky, and rain lashed the forest. Emily, huddled in her one-person tent, scribbled in her journal by the glow of a headlamp. The storm came early. Wind in the trees, sounds like voices. Just tired. I need sleep. Then, a few lines later, no, it is voices. Can hear crying, like a baby. But that's not possible. The closest people are miles away. At 2:41 a.m., she made one final note. "I'm going to check it out. Can't just leave a kid out there." That was the last anyone ever heard from her. On Sunday afternoon, when Emily didn't return, her parents drove out to the trailhead. Her car was still there. Her log slip was still tucked under the windshield. Rangers launched a full-scale search. For 7 days, helicopters circled overhead. Dogs picked up faint traces that vanished into nothing. Volunteers combed the ravines, calling her name until their voices were hoarse. They found her tent, collapsed but undisturbed. They found her boot prints, leading north, then turning abruptly off trail into thick brush. And then, nothing. until they reached the ridge. The Raven's Ridge overlook sits 3,000 feet above the valley floor. A sheer drop, no handrails, no margin for error. That's where they found her journal, waterlogged, pages stuck together but legible. One line, written on the last usable page, chilled even the toughest searcher. It's not a baby. It's calling me by name. Her body was never found. No sign of struggle, no torn gear. It was like she'd simply walked off the edge. But rangers noted something strange. Deep claw-like impressions in the mud, circling her tent, spaced too far apart for any known predator, and just beyond the overlook. Drag marks, but only for a few feet, then nothing. After multiple searches and no new leads, the searches were called off. Months passed, and investigators declared her dead. There was no possible way she could survive out there that long without gear, one detective noted. What Emily heard that night wasn't a baby, and this is where things get very real. Because it turns out her case wasn't the first. Across the US, from Appalachia to the Pacific Northwest, there are dozens of eerie, almost identical reports. Hikers, campers, hunters, claiming to hear children crying deep in the woods. Sometimes it's a woman calling for help. Other times it's footsteps just outside their tents that vanish when investigated. And in many of these cases, one detail keeps coming up. The voice says their name. Experts call it predator mimicry. In the animal kingdom, it's not unheard of. Some birds mimic distress calls. Certain predators mimic mating calls to lure prey in. But whatever's doing this in the woods, it isn't following biology, it's following us. Northern New Mexico, where Emily disappeared, sits just east of Navajo Nation territory. And according to Navajo legend, there's a name for these entities: Skinwalkers. In native lore, a Skinwalker is a malevolent shapeshifter, once human, but corrupted through dark rituals. They can take the form of animals, coyotes, crows, deer. But more chilling than their shape is their voice. They're said to mimic, to copy, to call to you in the voice of someone you love. A crying child, a friend calling for help, even your own voice. They don't chase you, they invite you. And when you step off the path, they're waiting. Some elders refuse to speak of them at all. Others will only whisper warnings. If you hear something in the woods, don't answer. If it calls your name, run. 2 years after Emily's disappearance, a father and son were camping in the same region. Around 1:30 a.m., the dad's audio recorder, used for nature sounds, picked up something strange. It began with wind, then static, then crying. A baby, loud, echoing. And then, clear as day, something whispered the dad's name. First softly, then again, louder. He never said his name on that trip. They left at dawn. The audio was posted anonymously. The post went viral. Some claimed it was faked. Others recognized the voice as a female. And one listener swore that they'd heard the voice before. In a missing persons case he was still working, the detective was stunned when he compared it to Emily Carter's voice, retrieved from a voicemail Emily's mother received weeks before she went missing. It was identical. Skeptics say it was an animal, a mountain lion, maybe a fox. Both can sound eerily like human cries, that's true, but animals don't say your name, and they don't drag people 20 feet to a cliff edge and vanish. And even if Emily had gotten lost, where did she go? No shreds of clothing, no bones, nothing. Every trail, every ridge, every valley was searched. Her scent disappeared mid-path, like it had been lifted into the air. Emily was known for her goodwill, and compassion for others. Sadly, that same compassion sent her off the path and sealed her unknown fate. Emily Carter's case is still officially open. Her family continues to search, hoping for answers, but locals in that part of New Mexico won't go near Raven's Ridge anymore. To this day, no one knows what she heard out there in the forest. Some say it was a mountain lion. Others believe it was something much older. Something that doesn't just mimic, it hunts. So if you ever hear a baby crying deep in the woods, especially where no baby should be, don't go looking. Because whatever it is, it already knows you're there. If you enjoyed this true and terrifying story, be sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. And if you've ever heard something in the woods you couldn't explain, drop it in the comments. I read every single one. Thanks for watching, and as always, stay safe out there.